This is another bonus video. This one was brought on by the fact that not everybody has chosen a scene that is identical to mine. In that, in my example, the car is sitting on the ground. But because some of you guys used weapons, or like an axe or a sword or something, and you actually made it so that the blade of the weapon was either embedded in a tree or a sword was stuck in a stone or something like that. So in a situation like that, it's a little tiny bit of a different scenario as far as the render layers goes, because with the way the default object only setup that I created for the original tutorial is working, is that if your object is stuck in the ground instead of sitting on the ground, the part of the object that should be hidden from view because it's embedded in something still gets rendered. And obviously that's a problem for your comp and Nuke because you want the ability to hide that. Now obviously you could in Nuke create a mask fairly easily and mask it out that way. But why would you do that when you can take care of it in Maya for free? And we already have all the information we need in the scene. It's just a matter of setting up a render layer to take advantage of it. So what we're looking at right here is a hypothetical situation where this IndyCar somehow crashed from space and lawn darted into the pavement as opposed to breaking to bits, which is what it should have realistically done in a situation like this. But hey, who's getting nitpicky here? Not me. So if I want to render this, I do not want to see the parts of the car that are currently embedded in the pavement. However, if you followed the original tutorials, which were more designed for something sitting on the ground, if I switch to my object only or my car only layer and render it, we're going to see everything. And obviously that breaks the illusion. So what do you have to do differently to cut out the nose of the car so that the ground is hiding it from view as opposed to just getting ignored, right, as it is right now? So it's super easy actually, and we can use all stuff and information that we already have, just in a slightly different way. So for example, if I go to the master scene, you can see the information I need is here, because in the master it looks like it should, except for this ugly CG plane that's covering up the image. So what we want to do is use this plane as a reference to capture and cut itself out of the alpha channel for the car, so that when Nuke sees it, the part of the nose that is hidden doesn't exist. We are already doing something similar in that we are using this plane on the shadow only layer to capture this shadow all by itself. So we're actually going to set it up in a very similar way as the shadow only layer with a few modifications. It's almost a combo of the car only and shadow only layers merged together, really. So let's go ahead and go through that. So first things first, rather than create a setup from scratch, I am going to just duplicate the car only layer and start with that because it has the majority of what I need. To be honest with you, I could also start with the shadow only and modify settings there because they both are, again, similar in what the assets they contain, but again, just with different settings. And actually, you know what? I think the shadow only is the better choice in this case, because if I use car only, right now the ground plane doesn't exist in car only. It's literally just the car. So I'm going to have to add the ground plane to it. I'm just going to simplify this because right now all that's in car only is a collection that contains the geometry for the car and the collection that's set up to hide the sky dome. But if I look at the shadow only, it actually has the car, the ground, and it's already got the sky dome hidden. So I am actually going to use the shadow only because that way I don't have to add the ground. If you were creating this from scratch, you would essentially need these three collections: one to add the car geometry, one to add the ground geometry, and one to add the sky dome setup so we can override the visibility of it. So rather than do that again, I'm just going to duplicate the layer that already has it if I can. So I'm going to Control C to copy the shadow only layer. Just deselect to go to a clear area here, and then Control V to paste. And now whenever you copy and paste a layer in a render layer in Maya, it will come in with these italic, it's just telling you that this is a pasted layer. I think what they're trying to do there is make sure that you're aware which is the original and which was the pasted layer, so that you don't get them confused, because they will have basically the same name. So I'm going to change this to car only, and I'll call it cutout because it's cutting out the nose of the car, just so I know which is which. And then once I've renamed it, I'm going to come up here and check this checkbox, and what you're going to see is that will confirm the paste and the italics will go away. Function wise, I don't think it does a thing. If you don't check the checkbox, it still seems to work. I've never really actually dug in to see why they force you to confirm the paste, but I think it's just to make sure you don't get the original layer and the copied layer messed up in the beginning. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. Now what we're going to see here is the shadow only information, but we want to change some settings here because we don't want to use the shadow only information. We want to see the car, and we don't want to see the shadow, to be honest with you. And then as soon as we flip those two values, we should have pretty much what we need. So first things first, let's turn the car back on. So I'm going to open up the layer here. And I'm going to get rid of the primary visibility override. You don't even have to get rid of it, to be honest with you. I can select it and just turn the car back on here. So we've added this override earlier when we did the shadow only to hide the shadow, to hide the car. But in this situation, I do want to see the car, so I'm going to turn the primary visibility back on. And you can see just doing that alone, I get exactly what I want. So again, starting with the shadow only was a great choice because it's pretty much got all the data we need. We just got to go ahead and change some settings. So visually, I've already got what I need. Now there's still one little problem in that if I go to the alpha channel, in the alpha channel for the cutout, I only want to see the alpha channel or the mask. I don't want to see the shadow information. So I need to turn the shadow off. So I'm going to have to create a fresh override. Now there's two ways I could do it. I could A, set it up so the car is not casting a shadow, or I could B, set it up so that the ground plane is not receiving a shadow. Both are valid solutions and both work equally. Depending on what's happening in the scene would determine whether or not I would choose one or the other. For example, if there was more than one object in the scene, if it was a car and the driver or two cars and they needed to cast shadows on each other or interact with each other, then I absolutely cannot turn the shadow casting of the car off. Otherwise, it won't interact with other elements in the scene. So in this case, it's not a problem because there's only one object. But in my opinion, the safest bet is affecting it on the ground. That way, if the scene changes later and another asset gets added, then I don't have to go ahead and change any settings for the car. So I'm actually going to set it so that the shadow catching or the ability to receive a shadow is turned off on the ground plane. So with the ground plane selected and the layer active, just making sure. So here's the ground planes collection. I'm going to go into the attribute editor for the ground plane. And what I'm looking for is on the shape node or the shape tab, which is usually the second one. I'm looking for render stats, which if you recall is the same place that we went to turn the primary visibility of the car off originally. But in the same list of render stats, you can see at the top that there's checkboxes to enable and disable, cast shadows, and receive shadows. I'm actually going to override the receive shadows off. So I'm going to right click, create absolute override for visible layer. And that adds the override to my ground plane. And I'm going to turn off receive shadows, but I'll do it with the alpha channel visible so you can see the results right away. So receive shadows will get turned off and boom, the shadows disappear. So now what we've done is we've created a new layer that captures the car cut out from the ground with no shadow information. And that is pretty much all we've got to do to set this up. Now, whether or not you keep the original car only layer is up to you. It may or may not be useful. Obviously, it has information that the other one doesn't. Oh, one other quick thing I just noticed. When switching between the two, the original car only and the updated version, I just realized that there's a difference in the lighting. If we have a quick look, so just watch, especially this part of the car here. Very different. So what's happening there is that the ground plane, which is not included in our car only, is actually blocking the light dome information from below. Which we don't want. Right now, the light information in the sky dome is giving the tones or transferring the tones of the image in the pavement and making it appear like it's bouncing off the surface of the car. We actually do not want to have that change. We want the lighting to stay the same. We want the car to see the sky dome, not the black ground plane, because right now it's just reflecting the black kind of nothingness back at the surface. So there's one other override that we need to do on the ground plane that I obviously forgot, and the second one is cast shadows. Because cast shadows is turned on, it interacts with the light, and the sky dome acts as a big giant blanket and light blocker, and it blocks all the light from the sky dome below. However, if we turn off cast shadows, you can see all that light comes back. And essentially, for all intents and purposes now, this plane does not exist. It exists as a cutout only, but as far from a lighting scenario standpoint, it does not add or contribute to the lighting in the scene at all. So I'm going to turn that back on, right click, create another absolute override, and uncheck cast shadows for that layer as well. So now the lighting for both the car only and car only cutout are identical, and everything I need here is good to go. When rendering, by the way, like I said, if you want to delete car only, you can, or you can just uncheck the render box here, and when you do a render sequence, then it won't get included.